Welcome to the Football Garbage Time NFL podcast. My name is Wong, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Football Garbage Time. And with me is my co-host, Darrin Midgett. Hey, Darrin, how you doing?
Feeling good, feeling great, man. It's been a while.
I know it has been a while, but there's been so much happening. That's why we're so busy. And I don't mean simply you practicing for your grand piano at Carnegie Hall, back there over your right shoulder. Nice job. Yeah, who knew? Darrin is, ace pianist too. Who knew? But hey, I love it. Jack of all trades. Yeah, but seriously though, we've been watching the combine. We were watching all the trades flying around, free agency around the corner. Of course, there were franchise tags. Even though there's no football games, there's a lot of football going on. So we got a lot to talk about today, and we're going to be talking about some of the big trades that have happened around the league so far this last week. We're going to talk about all the NFL teams and their released players and where they might go and what impact they might have in the free agency period. And then we'll hit our couple of guys that we think really did a lot in order to improve their stock in the draft market. So let's get rolling. Okay, let's start with the trade market because, of course, this impacts your team and my team. So, of course, this is the most important thing to us right now. And there were some big blockbuster trades already leading up to free agency. Of course, that's led the way with Deebo Samuel coming over to your Washington Commanders from the San Francisco 49ers in exchange for a 2025 fifth-round pick. That's a really nice one. The other one that we're looking at is Joe Thuney coming to my Chicago Bears from the Kansas City Chiefs for a 2026 fourth-round pick. And, of course, just today, Christian Kirk going from the Jacksonville Jaguars to the Houston Texans for a 2025 seventh-round pick. So there's three right there. Darrin, which of these trades do you think will have the most impact to the teams that these guys have been traded to?
Surprisingly so, Joe Thuney.
Surprisingly
so, because you got to look at it from the standpoint of what Caleb is in his career.
Right.
He's going in year two. He may not have Keenan Allen coming back. They're probably going to bring in another young wide receiver alongside of Doomsday and DJ Moore. Against the pass rush, I mean, we seen what happened to Caleb. He was sacked at a high number. So you want to bring in a guy like Joe Thuney, who is a champion, this might lead to them bringing in somebody else. When you think about it, Joe Thuney might lure another offensive lineman.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right. I mean, as we're kind of kicking around a little bit pre-show, I mean, Caleb Williams was sacked 68 times in the NFL last year in his first season, which actually led the league. So that's, welcome to the NFL, my friend. That is pretty terrible. It is also tied for the – I know, exactly. And tied for the third most sacks taken of all time. So he is hurting. He's going to need some serious ice from that. And he's probably thinking, well, what do I got to do to stay upright? I think Joe Thuney does a ton here. And, of course, just a couple days ago, the Bears also got Jonah Jackson from the Rams. So add Thuney there. They already got Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright. Maybe they have a chance of changing that turnstile. I mean, heck, if they cut that down by 10%, like if he just takes, I don't know, 6 or 7 less sacks, that could be the difference in terms of winning some games that were lost last time. And I love the pedigree here for Joe Thuney. I mean, he's played in 6 Super Bowls. He's won 2 with the Patriots, 2 with the Chiefs, 2 of the monster franchises in our lifetime. He started every game except for 1 over the last 9 years, every game. I mean, this guy is durable. He had and listen, he's 9 years in, but he had a Pro Bowl appearance the last 3 years in a row. So, and even last year in 2024, believe it or not, he had more votes for 2024 AP Offensive Player of the Year than Patrick Mahomes. So I'm just saying, this guy is a mover and shaker. This guy is going to be really impactful on that offensive line. Clearly, since we sucked on the offensive line in 2024, this is going to mean everything in 2025. But let's not overlook Deebo Samuel, okay? Now, I understand that Deebo Samuel had a little bit of a down year last year, 670 yards on 81 targets and 51 receptions. But, he's had, just think about the fact that in 2021, he had 1,405 yards on 77 receptions. And the year before, in 2023, he had 892 yards and 60 receptions and 7 touchdowns. So, I mean, Deebo Samuel is a stud, and don't forget, he also runs the ball very efficiently. Over his career, 1,143 rushing yards. I mean, this guy is incredibly effective on all phases. He averages 5.7 yards per attempt. That's better than most running backs. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, Deebo Samuel is a great weapon for Jaden Daniels, who's already demonstrated he can be good with guys who are marginal. But you add that to Terry McLaurin, to Diami Brown, who I love, Noah Brown, who I think has a great chance of improving, and Zach Ertz, who I believe is back around next year. So, I mean, that's something that's exciting, I think, right, for your Commanders?
When you think about the offense that Cliff Kingsbury runs, and there's not like every player above a screen, but he it's like almost every 2 to 3 plays is going to be either an attempt to, or maybe a showing of some form of a screen for that matter. And when you add that dynamic of Deebo Samuel, who can take a screen and possibly get you a good 20 yards or more if if everything works out. So you want that kind of a guy in your offense. And not only with that, he alleviates. I was just telling somebody this the other day. He alleviates some of the defense when you can have Terry on the sideline, and let's just say they bring Diami, and they can have a line where they have Diami, Deebo, and probably Luke McCaffrey, but not all of them. They're not scary names, but what they do on the field as far as getting NFL open, not wide open, but open, taking screens to the house. I mean, you want that kind of offense.
I totally agree. And like in terms of moving the chains, as you said, the screen game is like extending your run game in many ways, but he's also a great rusher as well. I mean, he's had 189 first downs by reception over his career, but he's had also 53 first downs by running the ball in his career. So, I mean, this is just all many different facets of dynamic. I mean, he wanted out of San Francisco, right? That could be part of the reason that he had a little bit of a down year last year in 15 games. He goes back to 2023 numbers, and he's getting 892 receiving yards and 225 rushing yards. I mean, sky's the limit, don't you think?
Sky is the limit, man, because that was a really big trade, not only to get him for a 5th round pick, but to add him to a locker room that's going to embrace him too. Because I mean, that's the elements that I look at as well. Like, how does he fit in? Is this going to be a guy that's just only good on the field, or is this guy just going to fit in on and off the field, and it makes everything work? Because that's what Dan Quinn looks for.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I do love Deebo Samuel and going to the Commanders. I think that is a great environment for him. It's exciting. A lot of players want to go there. It's going to be reinvigorating for Deebo Samuel. So I do love what that's going to happen there. It's a winning place for him to be. Could be what you need to get over the hump. And your Commanders were much closer to getting over the hump than my Bears are. So I do love that. Now, Christian Kirk, I mean, I don't know. I mean, exactly, right? I'm not really 100% sure I'm not sure what's going on. Now, obviously, he had a bunch of injuries last year. He only played in 8 games, 379 yards, only a single touchdown during that time frame. You go back a year in Jacksonville, and he was moderately productive, 787 yards on 57 receptions and 3 touchdowns. But he wasn't blowing the doors off of anybody here. I mean, it wasn't like he was one of those guys that you thought, oh, wow, if only he could put him in a better system, he would thrive. I don't really see that. And they already got Nico Collins and Tank Dell. And of course, Stephon Diggs, maybe he will, or maybe we think he'll be there, but we don't know. But they got John Mechie there as well, who was also starting to bloom last year. I mean, what do you think here? I mean, is there any reason to have Christian Kirk here other than just having depth in your wide receiver room?
I mean, CJ Stroud needs depth, and when I say that in an elaborate way, like you want that kind of a quarterback to have weapons,
right?
Because because he can get it down the field. He can get it down the field. As far as 9 routes, he can get it down the field. As far as running hitch, or so he's going to get the ball to the receiver. So you want to get him as many guys as possible. So I see why they want to load up that wide receiver room. But like you said, you already have Tank Dell and Nico Collins. So and then you think about John Mechie. John Mechie started to come on last year as well. So are you not high on John Mechie in that locker room or what? That's a question.
Yeah, and I think that maybe the answer, and I don't think that he's the good answer for this, but maybe it's just that they're just scared of the injuries. I mean, Nico Collins was out for a spell, Tank Dell as well, and they are obviously not as good when they only have one main weapon. Stephon Diggs also missed a lot of time, so there was a little bit of an issue there. But I don't see Christian Kirk being like a substitute for those guys. I mean, listen, he's great as a part of your wide receiver room. I just don't see him as a 1-to-1. If you do have a major injury there. So if that's what they were trying to do, I'm not super thrilled with the move. But hey, they only gave up a 7th-round pick, so maybe it's just a throwaway, and we'll see what happens there, which I'm totally fine with. All right, so those are the big trades that we got going around the league, and there are others, but hey, they don't impress me much. So we're going to move on to the next section here and talk about all those players who have been released from their respective teams and entering free agency. And this list is surprisingly long. And the ones we're going to focus on here are Joey Bosa, Darius Slay, Tyler Lockett, Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Raheem Mostert, Evan Engram, and Jonathan Allen out of Washington that just happened today. That a little bit surprising to me. So what do you think here, Darrin? Of those guys, Joey Bosa, Darius Slay, Tyler Lockett, Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Raheem Mostert, Evan Engram, and Jonathan Allen, which of those players do you think have the biggest market coming into free agency? Oh, Darrin, I think you're on mute.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, he's like in deep thought.
Yeah, because no, my beats went out.
Tech problems.
Battery issue. Should have charged them up earlier. But I mean, as far as the John Allen part, because it cut you off when you was going into the recently released guys.
Yeah.
But for me personally, I knew the John Allen thing was going to happen as a Commanders fan. You kind of seen the writings on the wall in regards to his money coming up at the end of the contract, new regime, numbers started to decrease. You seen the writings on the wall with him. But Joey Bosa is a shocker out of the Chargers, because you think that they're building a culture just now getting John Harbaugh there in the building. Jim, I'm sorry. Getting him to be as coach. You think that, okay, Joey Bosa might be one of the guys, but I guess that Ohio State Michigan thing really runs thick, and then
he couldn't have him there. No Buckeyes on his team. That's a fair point. I didn't even think about that.
Exactly. But then another guy who we didn't kind of go over, but somebody that jumped out at me that's going to be a UFA is Nick Chubb.
That's right.
I didn't see him not having, bringing him back when they're possibly going to have a young quarterback.
Yeah. No, that's certainly some big deals there. And Joey Bosa, to the point. I mean, he's obviously one of the greatest players in franchise history when it comes to the San Diego, now Los Angeles Chargers. I mean, it was surprising to me that they decided to let him go because of just his cult status there. He had 1 year remaining on his contract, would have carried $36.5 million in cap hit in 2025. He was, as everyone knows, number 3 overall pick in 2016. He was Defensive Rookie of the Year there. He made 5 Pro Bowl appearances as a Charger, and he ranks 2nd in franchise history with 72 career sacks. So I understand that 2022 and 2023 were down years with him because of injuries, but that has happened, right? He played 14 games in 2024, had 22 combined tackles, 5 sacks. He's only 29. He can get around. I wouldn't be surprised here, Darrin, if he ends up finding his way over to join his brother over in San Francisco. I mean, I can only imagine what it'd be like lining up against 2 Bosas. That could be a nightmare for opposing offenses. But that I agree. I think he's going to have a big market just because he's Joey Bosa and just because he's had all that productivity. But I don't want to shortchange the fact that, John Allen I mean, so he was entering the final year of his deal that was worth about $15.5 million base salary. He had no more guaranteed money remaining. Getting rid of him, Washington ends up saving about $16.3 million in cap space. That's a good amount. And they did draft defensive tackle Jerzan Newton. Yep, second round last year, and you have Darrin Payne there. And they were effective without Allen in the game when he had the torn left pectoral muscle, missed I think about 9 games or so. He did come back, and that's what I'm focused on, is the fact that prior to that injury, he was absolutely durable, right? Absolutely durable. So a pec tear is not something that is a chronic problem. That's something that happens. It's a freak accident. Yeah. And when he came back, he played the final 2 regular season games and 3 postseason games. He had 3 sacks, 3 tackles for a loss, 7 quarterback hits. I mean, that is incredibly productive for a guy coming off of surgery and injury. And I think he still has it. I think he still has it. I mean, he obviously 8 seasons with Washington. He had 42 sacks and 108 starts. I mean, like, absolutely durable except for last year. He's 30, so he's around that time. But listen, I mean, he's right there where I think he's still going to be really impactful in any team decides to pick him up. So I like John Allen as being a guy who will probably have a pretty big market as well.
I figured they were going to trade him at first, to be perfectly honest. I thought they were going to throw him into a package deal to get Myles Garrett or something of that.
Yes.
Or get draft picks back from an organization that's like, hey, we need a locker room guy. We need a guy that has this production that you just read off.
Veteran locker room guy, absolutely.
Let's give you a 4th this year and something down the line, a conditional. I thought that was the case because, hey, they got good draft stock from trading Jahan Dotson. Even though they did give up a few when they traded to get Marshawn, they gave up a third. I think they converted the third they got from Philly to get Marshawn Lattimore and threw in like a 7th round pick or what have you. So I mean, I would thought that they were going into that particular bucket of trading, but hey, they looked at it as if like the money means a lot, and they're looking out for him as well, because now he has the opportunity to kind of really test the market and not be one of those last guys out there after everybody gets signed.
Totally agree. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens there. And obviously the Commanders saves themselves some cap space as well, so they can make some moves in free agency. The other guy that I think will probably have a big market, Darius Slay. I mean, 6-time Pro Bowl corner, 1-time All-Pro. I mean, he coming off the Super Bowl winning Philadelphia Eagles. It's interesting to me. I mean, obviously they had to spend money somewhere in order to keep their front four. They did do that. Darius Slay ended up being a cap casualty, I think. I mean, in 14 games last season, he allowed only an 81.9 passer rating in coverage. That's better than his career average of 83.8. So he actually is, as good as he's always been. And there's always room to improve secondaries across the NFL. I think he's going to have plenty of good years ahead of him. So I wouldn't be surprised if he has a really big market as well. So those 3 guys, Joey Bosa, Darius Slay, John Allen, I think they're all going to have pretty big markets.
The creme de la creme of the free agency,
yeah, absolutely. And of course, surprise, all 3 of them defensive players. Interestingly enough, I mean, all the offensive players. I mean, who wants Aaron Rodgers, man? You want to give me a break? I know the New York Giants have been coveting him, but what are they thinking?
Yeah, I was going to say they're probably looking at it because they don't. I don't think they like drafting quarterbacks so high, or the quarterbacks that are out there like the combo guys.
Right, exactly. Right, dual threat type quarterbacks, right? Yeah, I mean, heck, let's just be honest. The Giants don't like drafting good quarterbacks. Aside from Eli Manning, who took many years to get to where he was, they really haven't done, and they didn't draft him, I guess, because I guess they traded for him after he was drafted. So I guess, if you look back, they're not just good. They're just not good at it. So it must be a all-around New York curse. But I mean, come on, didn't we already see what he did with the Jets? Do you really want that in another organization? It's ridiculous. And Devontae Adams, he's kind of getting up there. He's obviously very productive, but I feel like there is an element of, do you really want to invest in Devontae Adams at this point? He is a little bit of a diva. I mean, he commanded a lot of attention in Las Vegas, and then when he didn't get what he wanted, he basically shut it down. So, do you really want that? And he's 32. I mean, he was productive with Aaron Rodgers, but that's because Aaron Rodgers forced everything to him. So, I mean, I don't
Exactly.
know. Yeah, I'm not totally
Exactly.
sold on that. And of course, Evan Engram, a guy who did fantastic in 2023, but came crashing down to earth last year, probably because of injuries and so on. Jacksonville saves about $6 million by releasing him. It's not a whole lot, honestly, and he's been good there. So I'm a little bit. I find that a little bit surprising because his down 2024 was because of a hamstring injury, and in 2023, 114 receptions for 963 receiving yards, 4 receiving touchdowns. He is only the 8th tight end in NFL history to record over 100 receptions in a season in the Super Bowl era. So, I mean, I know that's just Evan Engram, right? But he's done stuff. And you're not saving a lot there. So Jacksonville, I think cap casualty right there. They're obviously suffering from a cap casualty there. All right, let's turn to the NFL Combine, shall we? And I know that pre-show we had talked about a few guys that we thought would have completely changed or at least really improved their draft stock based on their performance at the NFL Combine. So let's go ahead and go through them right now. And let's start on the defensive side. And I'm going to start with a guy that you really like, and that's Maxwell Hairston, cornerback out of Kentucky. He had the fastest 40-yard dash out of all the prospects at the Combine, 4.28 seconds. He had a decent vertical, 39.5, and broad jump at 10.09. He is already one of the top cornerbacks in the draft at 58 on the consensus NFL big board and the 8th cornerback on the board. But, the fastest guy at the Combine always gets a little bit of extra attention. I mean, what do you think here with Maxwell Hairston and what he is now after that performance?
I mean, for somebody that is size at 5'11", 5'11", 180, I
Yeah.
mean, he has the ideal size for a corner, maybe even a nickel corner, for that matter. To
Mm-hmm.
be honest, he fits the mold of a guy who can, and I love the guys that can fit the mold of playing special teams and playing their role on offense and defense as well. But they'll be more on special teams starting out. So he might be that kind of a guy. I mean, that you can, especially with this new blocking scheme they have for kickoff return. So you
Yeah.
never know with a guy that fast and set up the blocks right. He might be a special guy on special teams, but I want to see how he plays in the slot because of his size. And just looking at just some of the stuff I've seen about him, I mean, he could be one of those sleepers just because
Yeah.
now he went up as a fast guy, like that's who they look at. But then also
Yep.
he has the tape. He has the tape where
Yeah.
he's not like a prime tackler, but he is a sure tackler.
Yes, and he has great spatial awareness, incredible closing speed, and clearly the speed that he showed at the combine doubles down on that closing speed. I mean, this is a guy who doesn't necessarily have. I mean, he's going to run shoulder to shoulder of anybody, right? And if he can stay near and around the ball, he's going to be a real nightmare in
Make
terms of
plays.
locking down outside receivers. So I do like this, or slot receiver. It'd be interesting to see what happens. Running him in the slot. So Maxwell Hairston, definitely a guy we think has improved his draft stock. I'm going to give a shout out, of course, to you from last week. We talked about Nick Emanwari, the safety out of South Carolina. He had a magnificent showing in the NFL Combine. He had the second fastest 40-yard dash among safeties, 4.38 seconds. He had the best vertical and the best broad jump among safeties, rocking it at 43 inches on the vertical. I mean, this is something else. I mean, he was really, really out there. Now, he was already ostensibly a back end first round pick, 32 overall on the consensus NFL draft big board, second safety off the board. But I think this performance, kudos to you, Darrin. He may just sneak up into the top half, don't you think?
When you look at what he brings as far as being a physical freak, what he
Yeah.
brings as far as being a playmaker. Of course, being a Washington fan, I think Deshaun Taylor, when you think of guys that fit that mold,
Yeah.
I'm saying that that's exactly how he's going to play. Let me just preface by saying, I'm just saying with those type of traits, you can put him in different positions. You can put him maybe in the slot in certain positions. You can have him covering tight ends. So he's going to be a gadget guy on defense that may play up close to the line of scrimmage and be your eighth man in the box.
Yeah, I totally agree. And of course, that vertical that I mentioned that he had best among safeties, also the best vertical ever for a player over 200 pounds ever. I mean, this guy is, like I said, he's a freak. So kudos there on the pick of Nick Emenwari. He's going to be somebody to keep an eye on. And then one other guy that I like, throwaway here, he really wasn't drafted at all. I mean, not on the draft board at all. 359 on the consensus NFL draft big board. That's Kane Medrano, the linebacker out of UCLA. He ended up having the fastest time on a 40-yard dash amongst linebackers at a 4.46. I mean, he had 72 tackles and 11 total tackles for loss in 2024. He has been a significant special teams contributor. There may be some concerns about his size, but I mean, with that type of performance, I think he may actually find a way to get drafted. I know he's probably not on many people's radars right now, but I think there's a chance that he might find his way into the NFL draft and onto a team, maybe in that, 6th, 7th round. Who knows? I think what you're looking for, I think, Darrin, and you let me know what you think, but in the 6th or 7th round is just lightning in the bottle, right? You're just like, you're taking a chance. It's like a lottery ticket. What exactly are you going to get there?
And I was just looking at his draft grade. I mean, he didn't grade poorly either. At the combine, his combine grade is pretty good. I mean, he's 6'3". So I mean, hey, just like you say, he might be one of those late round jewels that everybody's like, let's not draft him. But then as soon as you see another team maybe creeping up, you want to get ahead, maybe in like those later rounds between like 4 and 7. So I can see that. I can see it happening.
Yep, absolutely. Now let's flip over to the other side of the ball and talk about those offensive players in the combine. I think Virginia Tech kind of hit it out of the park in the combine. And I'm going to start with Bashul Tutin, the running back out of Virginia Tech. On the consensus NFL draft big board, he is only 136, the 12th running back on the board. That's a testament, I think, more to the depth at the position than him himself, right? I think there are so many good running backs in the draft this year that it's hard to stand out. But he did his best to stand out at the combine with the best 40-yard dash amongst running backs at a 4.32. He had the best vertical amongst any running backs this year at a 40.50. And he had tied for the second best broad jump at a 10.10. So he did everything he could to bring his draft stock up. And honestly, he deserves it because in 2 seasons with the Hokies, he did real well against ACC level competition. He piled on 1,851 yards, and he was a legitimate threat basically on offense at all levels as well as on special teams. He had great acceleration, which he doubled down on and improved with his 40-yard dash. I think that 136 is late for him. 12th running back off the board. I mean, that's really kind of relative, but I think he has a chance to move up, maybe sneak into the early 4th, maybe even late 3rd with that type of performance. What do you think of Bashul Tutin, the running back out of Virginia Tech?
If I had to go with the NFL comp, it'll probably be somebody like LaDainian Tomlinson as far as the size and speed. I would put him in that area. Not exactly like him, because looking at his 10-yard split at 1.49, that's not bad, man. That's not bad for a 10-yard split. So he might be a guy that might go to Washington and catch some of those screens.
Yeah. I mean, I just see that's what I'm saying. Like, how could you go wrong if you can get him in the 4th round? I mean, you could just be a knock it out of the park guy. And who knows, right? I just feel like there's some people say because of the fact that he only played in ACC for 2 years, he played in FCS for the first 3 years of his career. So he didn't get as much screen time. He didn't have a lot of scouts looking at him, but this combine performance puts him on the map. And I think certainly that's a place where he could have done. I would be horrified if he ended up at the Commanders and I had to face him. I just feel like he would be a really good player to slot in there. Matthew Golden, the guy you mentioned, I mentioned, wide receiver out of Texas, already a guy that's going in the 1st round, 28th on the consensus NFL draft big board, 4th wide receiver off the board, but of course had the fastest time of the combine at 4.29. The fastest guy in the combine always gets way too much attention, but I think that improves his draft stock. Everybody remembers John Ross, who had a ridiculous fat time at the combine, did not amount to much in the NFL, but he still ended up being drafted. I think it was like 5th overall. So what do you think here, Darrin,
Yeah,
about Matthew Golden? I mean, I guess he was already on people's draft big board, probably a first-round draft pick, probably the 4th wide receiver off the board. Does he improve his status now in draft stock because he got the fastest 40-yard dash at the combine?
Oh yeah. Oh, most definitely. And taking a look at some of these numbers too, yeah, I think you can. This is a guy that can be, late round gems. Because let's just be honest. Following our conversation, a lot of these guys are getting themselves into the draft. They were
Yeah.
invited to be interviewed and to show their talents, but some of these guys are really doing what we're saying they're doing. They're actually making a way to move up the draft board. They're actually going to be late round gems, and they might be the guys that'll be Hall of Famers later. And I'm not
Right.
saying that about Matthew Golden, but I'm saying all that to say, to look at his numbers and his size and what he did with the speed, he can be a guy that can be slept on, and he's going to have every receiver that was drafted ahead of him. He's probably going to be one of those guys, and he's going to probably have a 1,000-yard season after a while. I can see that for Matthew Golden.
Absolutely. Last year, 3rd most receiving yards in the SEC and the most receiving touchdowns in the SEC. I heard, pretty good conference. So, I think that does show that he has some significant chops right there in terms of route running as well. One last guy to talk about here, that's Jalen Lane. I told you that I thought Virginia Tech knocked it out of the park. Here's the wide receiver out of Virginia Tech. And, he is a guy that I think people were kind of sleeping on a little bit. I mean, he's just 254 on the consensus NFL draft big board, the 32nd wide receiver off the board. I mean, that's pretty deep. That's basically undrafted, but he ended up putting in the 3rd best 40-yard dash amongst wide receivers, the 3rd best vertical, the 3rd best broad jump, and the 2nd best cone time. I mean, he was productive for essentially 5 years. Unfortunately, 3 of them were in Middle Tennessee State, so nobody was watching him. But he spent 2 years in the ACC or Virginia Tech, and he didn't have tons of eye-popping numbers, but he had lots of eye-popping plays. So what do you think about Jalen Lane of Virginia Tech? Does he improve his draft stock and maybe get drafted in this upcoming draft?
It wouldn't even hurt him to be an undrafted guy. And I feel like that may happen because of as we can see, the depth in the wide receiver room and going into the draft. So it may be beneficial that he does get to work out. He goes into a camp and shows his worth, because I mean, his numbers show that, hey, you got it. But his weaknesses, from what I'm seeing here, I mean, as far as the below average short area footwork, and I mean, a lot of these guys, they make their money off of winning off the line. And to me, that shows me that, hey, he may not win off the line a lot. So he may be a guy that has to go into camp and show, hey, I'm working on my releases better. So give me a chance. I mean, that's just my opinion.
No, I totally agree with that. And I think what he has in his favor is that he's also an ace returner. At least he was an ace returner with Virginia Tech. So clearly he can spend time on special teams as he develops his route running, develops some of his ability in the NFL, gives the teams an idea of where he might best fit in that system. But I do think he is a guy that deserves to be on a roster. And I think he may sneak into the top. But again, like you said, Darrin, if he doesn't get drafted, maybe all the better for Jalen Lane. Lower those expectations and just surprise and shock the NFL when he gets into camp.
Put your head down and work hard.
That's right. That's right. All right. That takes us to the end of the show here. Let's hit the air horn on the show. Darrin, why don't you give us your social media so people can follow you?
Hey, so anywhere you can follow me at Darrin Midgett. You can add a middle name in there as Darrin Teron Midgett on all social media platforms except for X. It's at D_Middy. And you can follow me, man. And I talk ball. I can talk with it. Hey, music, whatever, man. But, hit me up.
He will not back down, folks. Please engage with Darrin. We can't take him alone. You're going to have to tag team, okay? So, but definitely engage with Darrin. And you can find me. Account. You can find me on the Football Garbage Time page on Facebook. Thank you for listening and wasting time with us. Until next time, enjoy your NFL.